There we go. And then from here, I'm just going to quickly introduce Beth and Rick. They have a very short bio. In 1999, Beth and Rick Olsen experienced a tragedy that no parent should ever have to go through: the passing of their two children, Jessica and Joshua, in a car accident caused by a drunk driver. The immediate aftermath of such a monumental loss proved to be a numbing haze filled with police, friends, family, and the media. But it wasn't long before Beth and Rick began receiving messages from their deceased children, assuring them that they weren't actually gone, and ultimately proving the existence of life after death. Their best-selling book with Andrea Cajun is entitled We Never Left You. And their website is www.weneverleftyou.com. And I'm going to turn it over to Irene to read the mission statement. And thank you.
Our mission: Helping Parents Heal is a nonprofit organization dedicated to assisting bereaved parents to become shining light parents by providing support and resources to aid in the healing process. We go a step beyond other groups by allowing the open discussion of spiritual experiences and evidence for the afterlife in a non-dogmatic way. Affiliate groups welcome everyone, regardless of religious or non-religious background, and allow for open dialogue. Attendance today at this meeting is voluntary, and we are here for the benefit of learning from and sharing with other parents whose child has passed away. It is understood that our discussions are intended to be confidential and not designed to replace traditional therapy or spiritual counseling. However, these Zoom meetings are helpful to parents all around the world, and they are posted on YouTube so that affiliate members who are not able to attend this meeting live can also watch. Helping Parents Heal offers a wide variety of speakers to allow parents to be informed about many possible ways to heal, to connect with their children, and to learn about the afterlife. The views expressed by our guests do not necessarily reflect those of Helping Parents Heal, and we ask that you take from their presentations whatever may benefit you personally. And I just wanted to add before I turn it over to Rick and Beth that I connected with Rick and Beth before the conference, invited them to come to the conference. Beth spoke about we were having mediums. We did have one healer, and Rick did some wonderful healings at the conference. And I myself had a remote healing with Rick, which was transformative and just wonderful and so healing. So I highly suggest that if anyone thinks about having a healing, they consider doing that with Rick. So I'll turn it over to our dear friends, Rick and Beth, right now.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So nice to be here.
Yes, thank you all for showing up to chat with us for a little while. We've given this talk on several different occasions, and we kind of do it on an informal basis. I think Irene and Elizabeth said they're just going to hold the questions till the end, so that's fine. What we're going to do is kind of talk through a little bit about our journey over the first year and a little bit beyond that, and try and give you some insights into what we learned and through our experiences to try and help, because we have been down that path. We lost our two children in 1999, so it's over 20 years for us. And we have the fortune of being able to look back and reflect on a number of our experiences, and we found them very helpful. So our story, as we said, begins in July of 1999. It was a Sunday afternoon. I had been gone most of the week for work. I had come back, and Beth, as I got back on Friday, Beth was going to go leave for a few days with some of her girlfriends. And she had just gotten back, and we were talking about going to the mall because we were getting ready to build a fence in the backyard, because we had just moved to this town about a month before in June, and we had bought our kids. They were 9-year-old Jessica and 7-year-old Joshua. We bought them a puppy to kind of help them with the transition. And so we were going to leave to get a fence. And so we jumped in the minivan and looked back and made sure everybody was strapped in, and we headed off and came to an intersection. This was Sunday afternoon around 3 o'clock or so. And we pulled up to the stoplights. We were the second or third car. in the line, and all of a sudden we heard sirens, and we were looking around, and we could see in the direction opposite from us, there was a squad car coming with the lights on. And it came towards us, got into the intersection, and then turned to our left and took off. And then the light turned green, and the cars in front of me went, and I paused for a moment just to check because I didn't know where, why the officer was going or what he was doing. And then I pulled into the intersection, and then the next thing I remember is somebody saying, "Don't move, you've been in an accident." Said, "We don't know how bad you're hurt, so don't move."
Well, and as he was pulling into the intersection, it was just, a beautiful sunny day. And as he pulls in, all of a sudden I heard a huge noise, a loud noise, and we spun. The whole car spun. I didn't move, and I was like, I turned around to the children and I said, "What was that noise?" And that's when I saw that Joshua was already gone. And Jessica was half out the window. So I looked down and I could see that I wasn't hurt. I was totally just sitting in my chair, like in front seat belted. I was fine. I had one little scratch. And I look at Rick, and luckily he's breathing, but he's unconscious. So I jump out of the van, and I start looking around for help. And I'm like, I need help. I need a doctor. And someone came up to me and placed their hand on my shoulder. And they said, "I'm a doctor, and so is my wife. And we were in the intersection and we saw what happened. What can we do for you?" And I said, "Please help Jessica. Please get her out of the car and try to help her." And so then it was just a matter of going back to see what Rick was doing, if he was okay, if he was being taken care of. Then also going to talk to Josh. Josh was gone. I was just apologizing to him and just asking and begging God for help. I just needed to save my children. And I wanted to wake up. I actually thought it was a freaking nightmare. It was my worst nightmare coming true in front of my face. So I just kept basically kind of walking around, just being confused what to do. And so then I was like, I need more help. And so do you remember waking up in the intersection at all, or?
Just when I woke up, there was a gentleman holding my neck, and we're relaying what happened here because we're gonna come back and tie in a number of circumstances that help us and you to understand why we're doing this. And so I couldn't move. I couldn't see anything. Beth came up to me a couple of times. There was somebody that was holding my neck. It was an off-duty police officer that happened to be walking through the intersection and saw what happened and was able to jump in and help out. Beth was, she was asking for a helicopter, and a few moments later, a Flight for Life landed in the intersection. They took Beth and Jessica in an ambulance and left, and I was still in the car. It took them a while to get us out. It took a little bit of time to get me out of the car and in an ambulance. And what had happened was that as we pulled into the intersection, there was a drunk driver. The police car was actually going to respond to the scene of domestic violence, and this drunk driver was fleeing from the scene. He was traveling over 80 miles an hour, and he actually went airborne in the intersection and broadsided our minivan. He spun our minivan around, and his car continued through the intersection and hit another car as well. He was not injured. He got out of the car and basically passed out on the ground. They took us to the hospital, and Beth was already there. I get to the hospital, and they could tell I wasn't very seriously injured, but they still wanted to check me out. So I was in one of the curtained areas in the emergency room. And a few minutes later, all of a sudden I hear this yelling next to me, and I hear, "I didn't do anything. Why am I here? Let me go. Why am I here? I didn't do anything. I'm not supposed to be here." Well, unbeknownst to everybody else, the person that just killed Josh was in the room next to me, in the curtained room next to me. I was laying there for a while, and a doctor came in and said, "I'm sorry for your loss." And I said, "I know, Josh didn't make it." And he said, "Son of a bitch." And he turned around and walked out. And then Beth came in a little bit later and said, "We have to let Jessica go. She's not going to make it." So that was the first time that I got to see Jessie. And, I remember seeing her as we were piling in the car. And then the next time I saw her, she was on an operating table, wrapped up with a blanket with a tube sticking out of her mouth. And so that was the way that we got to say goodbye to our children. And so obviously we were numb, in shock. That happened on a Sunday. Since we had just moved to the town, we decided that everything was going to take place in the town that we had left from, that we had moved from. And so on Thursday, we had to go back to the town to talk to the funeral director to make some arrangements for a number of things. And we walked into the funeral home, and it kind of matched our mood because the lights were low. There really wasn't anybody there. And we're like, hello, is anybody here? And so finally somebody comes walking forward and they say, well, can I help you? And I said, yes, we're the Olsens. We're here to talk to Jim about our children. And she says, okay, let me go get him. And a few minutes later, he comes walking towards us. He's got this big smile on his face. And the first thing that crossed my mind is, you are an idiot. We're here to talk about our dead kids and you have this smile on our face. And he says, that Josh, he won't let me get anything done. He keeps turning the lights on and off and changing the radio station, my music station. Can you tell him to knock it off? And Beth and I looked at each other and we're like, we didn't know what to say. We're like, what? He says, Josh, he's turning the lights on and off and changing our radio station. He said, can you tell him to knock it off?
This was so new. I mean, this was 21 years ago, talking about life after death. And we never even discussed it before.
Right.
So it was huge for us. Jim was introducing us to our children who were still alive. And we didn't even know that was a possibility. We were just clueless.
And so this was the first inkling we had that maybe our kids, are still there, are not gone. We didn't know. And so that was our first introduction. And so later in the afternoon,
I have a really dear friend, Kathy Adams, and she's a medium. And I had arranged for her to meet with us on Thursday. And so we went to see her. I was thrilled to just, talk with her and get some hugs. But as we were sitting there, we were just discussing lots of minor things. But it wasn't until we were about ready to leave that she said, oh, wait, the kids are here. She says, no, they're here. And then we sat back down and we were like really anxious to hear what they had to say. And she just kept looking like up to the left of the room. And she's like, no, Josh isn't here. Just Jessica is here. She said, Josh is at it's a theme park called Great America. And she said, Josh is at Great America. And he says there's no lines in the spirit world at Great America. And so we laughed because that's exactly where Josh would be, And then she starts listening again. And she says, did Jessica like fried chicken? And I'm like, no, I've never made fried chicken. And she's like, well, yeah, she's saying it. She wants the chicken in the basket. And so then we were looking at each other like, what is she talking about? The chicken in the basket. So we were thinking like the chicken biscuit crackers, we were trying to think all of these different things. And no, she kept saying, no, it's the chicken in the basket. So then I finally remembered on Sunday before the accident, when I was shopping with my girlfriends, we were at an American Girl sale, which is dolls. They're themed dolls. Some are from 1900s, some from the 1800s, and they had multiple clothing and books and little trinkets and stuff. So that's what I was doing. I was shopping for Jessica because she loved her American Girl dolls. And so after I got home on Sunday, Jessica was kind of hiding because I was bringing in all of these presents I had bought for her and my nieces. So Josh was helping me bring it all in, and I was putting things on the bed, and I was kind of making piles going through and putting books in this pile for my niece or a doll in this pile for my other niece. And then I got to this little chicken in a basket. And I even have one right here because I have like 20 of them. And I said to Josh, I said, I bought this for your cousin Amanda. I said, it's a chicken in the basket. I said, but it's for Jessica's favorite doll, Josefina. I said, do you think Jessica would like it? And he said, yeah, I think she would like it, Mom. And so that chicken in the basket went in Jessica's pile. And probably left for the mall like a half hour later. And so I didn't remember it until after we were discussing chicken and biscuits and fried chicken. Finally, I was like, oh my God, it's this chicken in the basket. And I had to explain to Rick about it. And I had to explain to Kathy about it. We're crying. We're like, oh my God, they're alive. I mean, that's not a ball. That's not a doll. That's a chicken in a basket. So that was so sweet. I mean, I think for the first time we took a breath, and so then we got up, we said our goodbyes. And then she said, as we were leaving, you want to tell this part?
Sure. She said, well, the kids have a surprise for you in the car. And we're like, okay, well, now we can't wait to leave because we want to see what other surprise they're going to give for us. So we got out to the car and we jumped in the car, and we're just kind of sitting there. We're looking around and waiting, and there wasn't anything happening or going on. We're like, well, okay. And we're a little disappointed. So I started up the car, and the song that came on the radio was a song from a movie. And during that time, one of the kids' favorites movie was the Disney movie, was the animated version of Tarzan. And the song that came on the radio was from that movie. And the song was entitled Two Worlds, One Family. And so that's the song that came on the radio as we were there. So we left from there. We actually went and got something to eat for the first time, and then went to the funeral. And we had decided that we were just going to keep the story to ourselves about the chicken in the basket, because we felt it was, a message for us. Because Josh never told Jessica before they died. So to us, that was confirmation that they were still alive. Josh told Jessica after they passed, and she relayed that message to us. But when we got in the funeral home, our family was there first, and you could just, obviously you all experienced it, you could see the devastation that was there from the family. And so we had decided to relay this story to them, to kind of give them a little insight and hope. And as we're talking to them about it, there's the little smiles, half smiles and little giggles, and you could tell it had a wonderful impact on them. And so as we were standing in the receiving line, you could tell, as you were watching and looking out across the floor, you could see our family members were starting to share the story with other people around there.
Yeah, and I got a little mad. I was like, crap, this is huge. I wanted it just for us, now it's being, shared. But then we saw people kind of, again, smiling a little bit, because you got to understand, it was like, when people walked in, Jess and Josh, we had them in one coffin, and it was just it was like, where is God in this? We were a good family. What the hell, right? And so as we were seeing a little bit of peace on people's faces, it doesn't take it all away, but it did help. I hit you in the line, and I was like, this isn't just for us. This is for the world. We have to tell everybody that this is proof there is life after death. So it was pretty profound. I mean, we didn't know it would take 15 years later to write a book, but I mean, we were a little busy in between then.
So we were fortunate enough that the funeral home director had a cabin or home in Colorado, and he offered it to us. So after the funeral and a few other things, we went to Colorado, and just to disconnect from the world, because, if you've all experienced, your world stopped, but everybody else's world continues to move on. And we were trying to find a way to put ours back together, because we lost half our family in a matter of minutes. We lost all our kids, half our family. And so while we were in Colorado, we had the kids would come and visit us. They would lay on the bed on top of us at night. One of the nights there was a really bright light shining in one of the doors or the windows in the bedroom that we were in, and there was no moon that night.
Well, I had the dream earlier.
Yep.
You missed that, but I also dream of people who have passed. They do talk to me in my dreams. And so I had said to Rick that Josh was going to come to us. He's going to be a white light. It's going to be a bright light. And so then, that one night, there was no moon. There was just a bright light in the window.
A very bright light. And so it was during this time that I started to think about this, and I mentioned this to Beth, and she tried to hit me with a 2x4 because she was so mad about it. But I said, I really think this might have happened for a reason. And as we began to look back, we looked at everything that took place around the time of the accident. You know, we were getting ready to leave and Beth had a spot on her shirt. She noticed that as we were just about to pull out of the driveway. And she was trying to decide if she should go back and change her shirt or not. And she decided no, she wasn't going to do that. So we left. We got to the intersection. I paused before I pulled into the intersection, you know, and as I pulled in, that's when we got hit. The off-duty police officer was walking through the intersection and saw it and was able to help respond and help out. The squad car that came through the intersection and turned, he saw the driver go past him and witnessed the whole thing in his rearview mirror. So he was able to call and he was able to be on the scene immediately.
I got my doctors.
The husband and wife doctors were on the other side of the intersection facing us and they saw everything. Excuse me. And so both two doctors were there immediately. There were ambulances en route to another place that they routed to us. Flight for Life was en route to another place that they routed to us. And so as we kind of looked at it and talked about it, we came to realize that, you know, I was knocked unconscious, but Beth was, as the mother, had to be alive. She had to be awake because she had to be able to understand that everything that could have been done and everything that she would have asked for showed up and was there, so that she could know there was nothing that she could have done that would have changed that circumstance, as much as she wanted to try and do that and bargain with God over and over again. And so we look back at that and we realize that all of those events had to line up for that to happen precisely that way, and to have everything there so that she knew without a doubt that there wasn't anything she could have done or that wasn't there that would have helped her. And so, I mean, we're giving you small bits and pieces of what we've all put together, but we looked at it and realized that this was supposed to happen for a reason. And as our journey went on from that time forward, you know, we tried to go the traditional route of healing, you know, the counselors and that, but it didn't work for us because we couldn't find a counselor that had experienced loss like we had. They couldn't relate. You know, one of them had lost a job, one had a divorce, another one wanted Beth to, you know, scream into pillows. And so eventually it led us to go towards the direction of energy healing or shamanic healing, shamanic and energy medicine. And that led us down a path to be able to understand this whole aspect of spirituality and the fact that our kids are not gone. They're just in a different place. And what we have to learn to do is to speak a new language to be able to communicate with them. And one of the ways that we kind of relate to people about it is that, you know, if you had a friend and that friend came to you and said, you know, I've got an opportunity on the other side of the world. It's in a remote area. And so I'm going to take this opportunity. I'm going to travel there. So I won't be able to see you anymore. I won't, you know, they don't really have internet. They don't really have cell phones. I won't be able to contact you, but every now and then I'll be able to get you a message. So, you know, you would say your goodbyes, but you know, the friend is still alive. They're not dead, but they're just in a place that you can't really reach or talk to. And that's kind of how we tell people is that that's really what's happened to your children at this point, is that they're just in a place that you really can't reach and you can't really talk to them yet, but they send you messages. They send you information. You just have to learn how to look for those. We talk about the idea of coincidences, and people always say, well, it's just a coincidence. Well, you know, coincidences are really spirit or God or whatever your belief is working on your behalf. It's the universe and your children working towards helping you to get where you want, to help you to understand.
Well, and I always say coincidences or a sign, it's 50-50. But the sign is love. The sign is beautiful. The sign is just makes your heart just soar. So I just go with it. It's a sign, and it's not a coincidence. There's no coincidence in the world, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so our journey continued from there, and we've had some amazing experiences. We ended up traveling to Peru for the turn of the century with a group of people. For most of us that are here, probably remember, the turn of the century and, the Y2K, the whole aspect of, the computers are all going to crash and the world's going to come to an end. And we thought our world already came to an end. What better place to be than in a third world country where they don't really care about computers anyways?
Well, they don't really have computers.
Right. So we went to Peru and visited a number of sacred sites and did ceremonies there. And we had some amazing experiences there involving our kids, involving spirit, as well as we were with a group of people that were helping to introduce us to this whole idea of spirit and energy and the fact that your kids aren't gone. And so it was our lifeline at that point for us to help to continue to understand that, they never left us. They're still there. You just need to learn to look and communicate with them in a different way. That also, as we went through that process, began to help us to understand that the reason that accident happened was that our kids were here for a short time period, to put us in a position to be able to learn and to be available to help other people. And so once we realized that, we continued down that path. And so Beth spends a lot of time talking with people that have had loss, on the phone. We do healings. We, speak at places like this. And we are fortunate enough to understand that that's the reason why we're here this time around, is that we're here to try and do what we can to help other people and to bring them hope. We are over 21 years since the accident. We were fortunate enough, we've had 3 other kids. One other story about how Jess and Josh helped us is that Beth became pregnant. I want to talk about the dream, yeah.
Yeah. So our children died. It was July 18th, and it was just shortly thereafter I had my cycle, my period. And I was like, took the birth control pills, and I said to Rick, are we effing going to take these? Are we seriously? There's no control in this world. What are we doing trying to control this and not having more children? And he's like, we need to heal from this. And I'm like, I don't think I'm ever going to heal. No. And so Rick said, yes, take the pills. Let's continue, let's get some healing. Let's take a breath. So I took the birth control pills for about a week and a half. And so then the end of July, we were starting to get ready to get for Colorado. And I woke up and I said to him, I had a dream. And Rick says, I had a dream too. I'm like, very shocked because he never remembers his dreams. And I said, my dream was you have to have that chemical, get that chemical out of your body. And Rick said, that's exactly what my dream was. Get the chemical out of your body. I threw the birth control pills away. We went to Colorado, and I think we were intimate once, okay, to be quite honest. And by the end of August, I was going down the mountain and I bought a birth control a pregnancy test. And I was pregnant. I mean, we're talking, I don't know how that happens, but of course it was divine, God, everything, because then our third son then came on the weekend of Mother's Day. So the weekend of Mother's Day, on a Saturday morning, I gave birth to Gabriel Joshua. And that was just such a godsend. I didn't have to have a Mother's Day without a child in my arm.
And so we had Gabe, then we had another son, Ben, and we had a daughter, Grace. And 2 of them are in college and the other and the daughter's in high school right now. And so we have been able to move forward with our life. We have been able to put a little bit of understanding to this whole idea of this loss. And we're very open with our kids and have been about their brother and sister, and that they have a brother and sister. We're very open with them about all of these aspects. And we honor Jess and Josh by trying to do what we can to help people, to help them understand, to help them, just survive. Because that's the hardest part in the beginning, is just surviving. Because your world has literally been ripped apart. And until you begin to take those baby steps, to take that first breath, to go a few minutes without coming apart, to go a day without crying, to go a few days without, breaking down. It's all those little steps, and you need somebody that has been there. We've been there. We've been able to help people with that, and have put our life back together and have moved forward and are trying to do the best that we can with what's happened. And so we've got, we were instructed to talk for about half an hour, so that's what we did. Excuse me.
That was perfect, Rick. That was absolutely beautiful. First of all, I'd love to agree there are no coincidences. So everything that happened was perfect in your story. I'm just so I'm so in awe of how healing your talk is, and just hearing you speak is so beautiful. And Jess and Joss must be so proud of the two of you. And we have a question from the chat box. Shelley is asking, do you still get signs from them? Do you still feel your kids as much as you did in the beginning?
You just answer that.
Well, we have to answer that a little
Yes.
differently, because I do shamanic healing, and I'm fortunate enough from the shamanic side of things that I can visit them. I can travel to where they are. And when I do healings, the kids will step in and help. Relay just a short story. There was some people that they became friends with us. This was, I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago. They lost a 4-year-old daughter in a car accident, and they were given 3 copies of our book at the funeral. And turns out they live only 10 minutes from us. And so we were able to meet with them and talk with them. And
we cried with them and we laughed with them, and yeah.
And at some point when it was appropriate for them, I did some work with them, and I did a session with the husband. And he was done. When he was done with the session, he said, he talked about he had seen his daughter, and then he said there was this boy there. There was this young boy, and he was in this car, these little Tykes cars that you pedal along with your feet. And he said he had such a look of joy and love on his face and beauty. He said it was almost overwhelming. And he just came right in front of me with the car and looked at me and smiled, and then just drove away. And so he relayed that story to me. And the next day, he saw a picture of Jess and Josh, because he had never seen one before. He said, that was the boy. He said, Joshua was the boy in the healing. So for me, the two, Jess and Josh, show up and help out in healing. So I'm able to work with them and see them. And they don't show up as 9-year-old and 7-year-olds. They show up as older adults, very powerful spirits.
Wow.
That's how I
Rick?
kind of envision them as well, as older spirits, great spirits. And I do dream of them once in a while, but no, I think more the signs I see now are with what Rick is doing, when he's helping others in spirit. So
I was just going to say, Rick, can you take a couple of minutes and just talk a little bit about a shamanic healing and what you do?
Sure. So from a shamanic perspective, there's a luminous energy field that surrounds the physical body. And that luminous energy field contains the makeup or the blueprint of who we are and what we are. And when there are disruptions in that energy field, it changes us, causes us to act differently. Then those disruptions can manifest physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. Those disruptions are typically caused by some type of a trauma, and that trauma leaves a dense energy imprint in your luminous energy field. And so what we do through the process of the shamanic healing is we work to identify what that trauma might have been. We work to find that dense energy imprint. We figure out which chakra has been affected by it, and we work to clear out that dense energy. And by clearing that dense energy out, it allows you to return back to who you are and what you are. The other thing it does is that because that imprint changes you and causes you to act differently, it has created an energy about it. And so when you clear that dense energy imprint out, you drain the energy. So for example, with people that have suffered, loss from children, you will still miss them, but the pain, the tremendous
The heaviness
loss,
of your heart, you can't breathe.
that's what's pulled away because that dense energy imprint isn't affecting you anymore. And typically you will get a sign or a message, or some people see things, feel things, hear things, some people don't. I will relay any information that I get, and it's done inside a sacred space, and that sacred space thins the veil between the physical world and the energetic world, which makes it easier for spirit guide, loved ones to come in and do the work that they need to do on your behalf.
That's wonderful. So I was going to ask you how you got into this. How is it that you became a shamanic healer? And are you both shamanic healers then? And obviously there have been people who have been brought into your journey, the gentleman in the funeral home, and then obviously other people, but how did this transpire?
So when we began to go down the path of the non-traditional healing, we somebody that we had connected with mentioned that there was a weekend that this gentleman was doing an introduction to shamanism for a weekend. So we decided to go there, and when we went there, I talked to the gentleman and I explained our situation, what had just happened, and he said, "Well, how long ago did this happen?" And I said, "Oh, about 5 months ago." And he said, "Well, you're not going to work with each other. You can't do that." He said, "I will work with Beth and my assistant will work with you, Rick." Because normally people in the class were working with each other. So he used Beth as a demonstration. And when he was done, he said to us, "I'd like to talk to you two after the session is done, because I want to talk to you about it, or after the class is done." So when the class was done, he talked to us and he said, "I want to let you know that your kids came while I was doing the healing with Beth." He said, "They're not little kids." He said, "They were 8 feet tall, very strong, very powerful spirits." And he looked at me and he said, "You were knocked unconscious." He said, "You were unconscious during the accident." And I said, "Yes," but I hadn't told him this. He said, "Well," he said, "he told me the kids told me the reason why you were unconscious is that you've been a shaman in many lives before, and you had to help them cross over. That's one of the roles of a shaman, is to help people cross over." He said, "They also said it's time for you to become a shaman again. You need to do that in this lifetime." And so he asked us to come to Peru with him for the turn of the century. And then after that, we um, joined a class that he had. It went on. It was a class to learn how to become a shaman, to learn how to help and heal people. It was a 2-year program, and it met twice a year for about 8 or 9 days. And in one of the sessions, it was late at night in one of the sessions when we were out in California and at this lodge that we were working at, in Sacred Indian Burial Ground, or Sacred Indian Grounds. And I was working to just practice on somebody, just to sense some energies. All of a sudden I felt this rush of energy come in, and I pulled myself back. And the next thing I knew, Alberto was the gentleman's name. He said, "You have to get up." He said, "You have to move. You have to get that energy out of your body."
So what had happened was I was right next to Rick, and we were sensing energies on a gentleman who was just laying on the floor. And so our hands were over him, just sensing his energies. But there was a window on the wall that I was facing, and I saw it was like a lightning strike. And I was like, "Oh, shoot, it's raining." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, I'm in California. It doesn't rain like in Wisconsin. We live in Wisconsin and it rains all the time." So I was like, "Well, that was odd," but it literally looked like a lightning bolt. And then that lightning bolt came in the building. And so it struck Rick. And what happened was they had 80 kind of track lighting, the gold track lighting, and one started blinking. And then one added on. And then all of a sudden, within probably 10 minutes, they were all just going at different intervals of time. And I'm just kind of watching Rick. He's sweating profusely. He's not moving. He's just breathing. And Alberto's like, "You need to stand up, Rick." And then You can tell what Alberto told you.
Basically, I was hit by the spirit of lightning. The spirit came in and they wanted me and it hit me. And he said that's one of the traditional means of being called to be a shaman. He said, if you don't get up and move, that energy is going to settle in your joints and it'll cripple you. And so I got up and began to move around and eventually, was able to move and became a little more coherent and, had some interesting experiences that night. And then 2 days later, the same thing happened again. And so we kind of joke about it a little bit because the 3 traditional ways to be called to be a shaman is, to have a tragic event happen in your life, and to have your life change on a dime, to be struck by lightning, or to heal yourself, from some type of an illness. And we joke about it and say, well, I've had 2 out of the 3. I'm not waiting for the 3rd. So I guess I know what I'm supposed to do. So, that was one of the signs for us to move down this path. And since that moment, my capabilities to see and sense energy have changed dramatically. That energy literally changed me at a cellular level. There's things I can't eat. There's things I can't drink. There's medicine that affects me differently. Chemicals affect me differently. So
you're allergic to a lot of things. Yes.
Yeah. So
that's amazing. I think it's so fascinating that one of our favorite other shamanic healers is also named Olsen. So obviously Jeffrey Olsen, I'm not sure if you guys know him, but he was at the conference the first time as well. And he's taught shamanic healing. So that's pretty amazing to me because neither of you fit the profile of a shamanic healer, but it's wonderful.
Nope.
So we do have other questions. I'd like to ask this one first because it's one that I had myself. Kathleen is asking, Rick mentioned that he is able to travel to where the children are. What do you see there? What is it like? Can anyone learn to travel there as well? Or just, is it something that you can do? Could you maybe tell a little bit about where your kids are?
Sure. From a shamanic perspective, one of the core principles or practices from a shamanic perspective is this idea of journeying. And what you're doing is you're entering into an altered state of consciousness. And, one of the traditional descriptions of a shaman is somebody who walks in both worlds. They walk in this world and they walk in the energetic world. And it's actually a very simple process to learn. It takes a little bit to practice. But it's an aspect of journeying where you enter into a meditative type state, and initially you're guided to go there by whoever is running the class or the group or whatever you're doing. But you can be guided to where the children travel to or where people go to. You're not actually in the space that they end up at, but it's kind of like a halfway point, an intermediary spot. And it looks a lot like this representation of this world for some people. For other people, it's a space that's all clouds. Everybody can perceive it differently, but you're able to journey to there from an energetic standpoint, and you can meet with your loved ones. It's a process that has been done for literally tens of thousands of years. So from a shamanic standpoint, they have evidence of shamanic cultures that are over 50,000 years ago in caves in France. So this is something that humanity knows how to do innately and has done it for a long time. For a lot of people, it's just a matter of remembering it rather than learning it.
Wow, that's beautiful. And yes, thousands and thousands of years. So this is wonderful that you're able to connect with your kids that way. And I would assume that you're also connecting with other people's children or loved ones when you're doing these shamanic healings. Is that right?
Yes, that is true.
That's wonderful. So
they show up to help.
Go ahead. They show up to help.
Yeah, a lot of times when we're working with somebody that has had loss, that loved one will show up to help, or that loved one will show up. It's not like you're, visiting a medium or a psychic where they're relaying messages. and from a conversation standpoint, but you can feel them there, you can sense them there. They may relay messages, they may not. Sometimes it's just a matter of, sometimes people say, I could feel them laying on top of me. It's just a sense of them being in that space with you.
The way a lot of times when I'm scheduling healings for Rick, people will ask, what is it like? And I said, actually, it's like a room full of love, because your spirit guide will be there, God will be there, or whoever, your higher being is, your loved ones that have crossed will be there. So it is a room full of love. That energy that is, it's kind of gets expanded.
Mhm.
And so you feel that. And I always say, it's not that Rick loves you, he just met you, but it is just a room full of love. It's very gentle.
So do you do these remotely as well as in a room, in a physical room?
Most of my healings right now are done remotely. Energy isn't limited by time or distance. I've literally done healings all over the world with people all over the world. Singapore, Israel, Germany, Australia, New Zealand. So it's, energy isn't limited.
Wow, that's beautiful. So Shelley's asking, do you believe in soul planning? My son passed in a tragic accident, and I am struggling to understand his soul plan and find it hard to understand that he would need to lose his life for my soul's growth. Could you maybe say something about that also in the context of your own two children?
Sure. For us, we were able to come to that realization of why our kids were taken from us, why that accident happened. It wasn't that they passed gently. Josh died instantly and Jessie was hanging out the window of a minivan, with part of her skull cracked open. So I wouldn't say that they passed peacefully. We didn't understand at that point why that happened. Why would that have to happen? What plan would come together to have us go through something like that? But what we tell people is that if you look back at the time that led up to the passing of your loved one and the time during that passing and just after that, a little time after that, if you really look back, your loved ones will begin to they would have given you signs or talk about giving you indications that they were getting ready to leave, even though they didn't know it. One of the things that our son mentioned to us a couple of weeks, it was about a week before we moved to the new place. He said, excuse me. He said, I'm going to miss this place when I'm gone. And he had this look in his eye that wasn't like the town that he was living in. It was a completely different look in his eye. And we came to understand he was talking about he was going to miss his little life that he had here when he had passed on. And so if you look back at the events that occurred prior to their passing, the events that occurred around their passing, the events that occurred after that, you can begin to piece together all those little bits, those things that you call coincidences, those signs that it was time for them to go. We may not always understand why they leave, but I often tell people that I've learned over the amount of time that I've been around that Spirit and my wife are a lot smarter than me, and I listen to both of them. So if you can't always understand what's taking place and why, but it's that aspect of belief and faith. And both of those things are never really tested until you go through something like we all have been through. And what you need to work on is to look for those little bits that help you cling to, yes, this was supposed to happen. I don't know why. I may never find out why until I join my loved one that's passed. But you really have only two ways you can look at this. It was a senseless loss and there's no reason for it. Or you can look at it from the standpoint of there's a plan somewhere, I just don't understand it. If you look at it from the aspect of it being a senseless loss, think of the energy and the frame and the mindset and the lifestyle that that puts you in, as opposed to, yes, there is some kind of a reason. I really want to know what it is, but I don't know what it is right now, but I understand there's a reason. There's a completely different frame of reference that you have when you look at things from that aspect. And so that's what we try and help people to begin to look at, to look for those little nuggets of hope. Because even though we may not understand what it is, if we understand and cling to the aspect that, yes, there is an idea, there's a reason for it, that gives you that glimmer of hope to be able to continue to move on.
That's beautiful. And I agree 100%. I think that none of us will understand why this happened to us until we get over there with them. But I do know that they're with us every step of the way and they're helping us. And I think it's beautiful when you talk about all of that love being in the room, because they are here loving all of us this evening, just as they always are at every single meeting. And I can feel it just as much as I can feel Morgan's hugs when he hugs me. And when you talk about the fact that all of our kids are giving signs, I've already told everyone about the fact that when Morgan was going to China the second time he went, he told us that he wasn't coming back. While I was packing with him in his room, he said, "I don't think I'm coming back from China this time, Mom." And I told him, "You don't have to go over there. You have all the credits you need. There's no reason for you to go." And he said, "Mom, I'll be fine." And he is fine. He's better than we are. I mean, all of our
Right.
kids are better than we are, definitely. They are huge, bright lights, and they are just having a blast being together and spending time together. And it's just hard for us. But you're right. We need to be able to see the silver lining and see the fact that we can move on and do wonderful things with our lives, with our kids who are with us every step of the way.
Right.
Galen is asking, Rick, where was your skepticism on this journey before the lightning strike? Were you already on board before that, or was that what really did it to you?
Well,
You were on board. I think it was a month and a half after the accident, and he was already saying, "I think this happened for a reason." And I was like, "Shut the front door, just be quiet." It was just so hard for me. I'm like, I was struggling with that, but he was starting to see the signs already.
when I look back and saw all those coincidences as they lined up and the experiences that we had, the visitations from our kids and the experiences that we had after that, I couldn't deny that there was something else there. There had to be something else there. And then we had some amazing experiences with, energy and spirit when we were in Peru. And then, to be hit by the lightning and to see the difference that it made for me, I couldn't deny that anymore. So I was always open to that idea, that there was something more in this life. I was always open to that before the accident with the kids. I didn't have a frame of reference for it. I just had a sense that there was more. This experience that we went through, for me, helped to solidify what it is and what's there.
That's beautiful. Well, you've answered almost all of the questions. I have a very important one from Sherry that maybe we can conclude with. She's saying, can you connect with a child who has taken their own life during a shamanic healing? Is that something that's possible?
Yep. I've done a fair amount of work with people that have experienced the loss of their loved ones through them taking their own life, whether it's on purpose or accidental. And I can say in every case, the person that's on the other side understands what happened and why it happened. And in no case has that person said or given me or the people I work with any indication that they wish they were back here and they wish that didn't happen. One of the things that I've come to believe from going through those experiences is that people that end up taking their own life get to a point in this lifetime that they know it's their time to go. There's a sense in them that knows it's their time to go, but they just don't know how. They don't know how, they haven't, the circumstances aren't there, but they know they have to leave. And so they sometimes end up taking their own life rather than having these other circumstances come together so that their life is taken for them. And so from my experiences, there's really no difference between somebody that's killed by a car, like our kids were, as opposed to somebody that takes their own life, whether intentional or accidental.
That is so comforting and beautifully said. And I knew you would say exactly that. And so that makes me feel very, very good. And I just think that this whole evening has been very comforting for everyone here. There are people who have had healings with you who have said beautiful things in the chat box. So I'll definitely send the chat box to you as well. Do you have some parting words of wisdom for us to help us along the way?
What we try and do is at least be a signal of hope for people, because the hardest thing is when this first happens, you don't know how to go on. You know, when Beth and I woke up the next morning after the accident, Beth said, I can't go on. I said, I don't know how to go on. I said, well, can you make it to the next day? She said, no. I said, well, can you make it, for the next hour? She said, no. I said, well, can you make it for 5 minutes? She said, no. I says, okay, then let's just make it to the next breath. Just breathe. So we laid there and just focused on breathing, just that next moment. And after a little while, she said, I got to go to the bathroom. Life has a way of helping you to move along, and you look for those aspects of hope. There are people that have gone through what you've gone through, and the work that Irene and Elizabeth do in putting this all together gives you a place to go, gives you somebody else to talk to, gives you somebody to look at. It doesn't have to be us. It can be anybody that you connect with. But you know that these other people have found a way to get through it. And that gives you hope. That's the biggest thing that people are missing after the loss of their children, is that they no longer have hope. They don't want to go on. Being involved with a group like this and connecting with people gives you that spark of hope, gives you that reason, gives you that insight. Look, if they can get through it, these other people can make it through it, even though they don't know how, maybe I can. And so that's what we like to try and pass on to people, is to at least give them that little bit of spark of hope.
That's beautiful. Beth, would you like to add anything to that?
No, he says it best. I do think it is. We almost, when we lost both children, it was devastating. And yet now it makes a lot of sense for us, because I cannot tell how many people will say, I only lost one, but you lost two, and then I can do this. And so we are that little beacon, a light and everything. So, it's such an honor now to be in this position and to help others and to know that we are making a difference. And so if I hear that I'm helping someone, that just feeds my soul and just makes me so happy. So it is quite an honor.
Well, I will say that helping others is something that heals us the most. And so that makes complete sense, because it makes our kids so proud. It makes us feel good. And I agree that I think that, all of the caring listeners absolutely adore getting those calls and being able to know that they've led someone else out of the darkness and into the light, which is what we are all about. And I'm so glad that you both are doing this as well. And we truly appreciate you being here this evening. Again, their book, this is Rick and Beth Olsen. Their book is We Never Left You, and it's available, I would assume, on Amazon, but we have a link to it on our website, and we've had it for several years now, ever since the conference, I'm sure. And they also have a website, which is www.weneverleftyou. Is that correct? Or we never left you. So please look them up.
Yes.
.com, exactly. And thank you all for being here. As always, please feel free to unmute and say thank you and goodbye. And we will have
Thank
this.
you so
Thank
much.
you.
It's such
Thank
a beautiful
you.
evening.
you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rick. and
Welcome.
Beth.
You're welcome.
Good
Thank
night,
you.